this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan. One of the things that's associated with Mardi Gras is revelry. I've been to many Mardi Gras parades in various locations around South Louisiana over the course of my life. It's something that my family has done for years. Even my grandmother, who was from a very, very religious family, took the train down to New Orleans in the 30s and visited her aunt. Aunt Bertha, as a matter of fact, was her name, and she lived in the French Quarter. And my grandmother actually told me stories of going to Mardi Gras parades with horse-drawn floats. And it was amazing, to hear her talk about it. And the actual flambeaux where they're illuminating the path and they're actually using the flames of the flambeaux. That's what it comes from. And they're dancing up and down the streets. But, and to her eyes, from her religious upbringing, it was shocking, to say the very least. But it was a memory that stuck with her. And of course, as time has gone by, I've gone over the years, and I've taken my family to more family-friendly events, if you will. But all in all, it is an end of a season of the year where you're supposed to celebrate all those things that have passed, and then entering into the Lenten season, beg forgiveness. And of course, you're going to fast. But for some, they can't get past that. For some, they leave it all on the road. And I can't tell you, my friends, how many cases of alcohol poisoning I've worked as a death investigator in New Orleans over the years. It's very sad because people that are not used to drinking suddenly show up in my hometown and drink like they're all old pros. And it is a sight to behold, and many times very tragic. But, today we're going to discuss not just one case, two cases, but actually a series of cases that have occurred in various locations around the world recently that involve the consumption of a type of alcohol that has led to death and ruin for many. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags. Dave, you might not know this, but if you've ever been around somebody that has been consuming alcohol, like the night before where they've been out partying, and
you do know who you're talking to, right?
Let's pretend I don't.
Okay.
But
all right. Go ahead.
They'll even go home and get and bathe themselves, put on cologne or perfume, and the next day they show up to work, and when they breathe in your face, you've got that. And I've often described it as it's like a sickly sweet smell that kind of emanates from them. And you can tell that, mischief has been had, perhaps, or maybe revelry. I don't know. But
you're being so kind.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to use the word debauchery.
Yeah. It just smells like something that came out of an ashtray mixed with grapefruit juice.
It's rough. And plus, I was, believe it or not, way back when I was a fraternity boy, and we would mix up, drinks in trash cans with boat paddles and put fruit in there. And of course, we would use grain alcohol and lots of Kool-Aid and tons of ice. And we had no idea. I thank God that I escaped that without winding up in the hospital,
right?
Because it is very dangerous, and alcohol is very dangerous. And for us, we think about alcohol in the sense of spirits, like spirits to consume, celebrate with. Maybe you enjoy wine and the different types of wine that are out there. Maybe you enjoy good scotch. I have no idea. but it's all very dangerous. But there's not, but consumable alcohol is actually ethanol. And there are other kinds of alcohol that are out there. And of course, that's what we're focused on today.
Well, in reality, the story that we started with was, it said, recently engaged couple dies after drinking homemade limoncello. That was pretty much the headline. And when you get down to the second paragraph, these two people are Greta Marie Otteson and Els Arno Quinton. She's from Great Britain. He's from South Africa. And they meet up. They're both world travelers. They travel and live in a lot of different places. And they both find each other in Vietnam. And that's where they both, in all the places they had lived, where they wanted to remain and begin a life together in this one place in Vietnam. And they were just a match. Everything I looked at on this couple was just nice people, good people, educated, fun-loving, and really loved each other. And they get engaged, and to celebrate, they picked up, well, the way it was written, and I told you this, homemade alcohol, homemade limoncello. Well, for starters, I don't know what limoncello is. And being a recovered alcoholic in recovery for over 33 years now, it's something I had never even heard of.
Yeah.
And so I looked at it because I wanted to see what we're really talking about. Yeah. I'm thinking they're having to mix up their own alcohol, starting with potatoes or something. And I was thinking, okay, you got lemon, so they're going to use lemon rinds. I mean, I started thinking, that's what I was thinking. That's not the case at all.
Really?
In reality, they were in Vietnam. And they went to a restaurant and they purchased bottles of this limoncello. And what it is, it's a drink that is made with from using lemon rinds and things like that to get the flavoring. Yeah. But it's made with a vodka or some type of Everclear, an alcohol. Yeah, just grain alcohol. And that has no real flavoring of its own other than just, here it is. It's rot gut. But what they would do at some places, of course, is use much lower quality of vodka or what have you. They wouldn't use top shelf, and then that's how they would make it to keep it cheap. But
let me tell you a real quick aside about Everclear. I knew this was not my case. Mm-hmm. Okay, this was not my case. It was a colleague's case. We had a case of, and it wasn't Everclear, it was actually Golden Grain, which is essentially the same thing, which is pure grain alcohol. The proof on it is just absolutely through the roof. If you've ever even tasted it with the tip of your tongue, it's a taste that you'll never forget. It'll put you on the ceiling. Very, very strong. And at this particular party, you had people that were doing straight shots of Everclear and then or Golden Grain, and then chasing it with I can't remember, like Sprite or something like this. Anyway, one of the people at the party, Dave, got really hammered on this stuff, and he was a smoker, and he made the decision to entertain people there by getting mouthfuls of Golden Grain and taking a lighter and blowing it out and literally blowing flames. Dave, he set the house on fire. 2 people died. Yeah. In this particular instance, it's just one of those little things, that occurs. But again, when it comes down to it, whether it's vodka or whether it's Golden Grain, Everclear, that's ethanol. Right. That's a consumable alcohol, or as consumable as it can be. Now, we all know that, look, I mean, even
I was picturing you retelling the story of Revenge of the Nerds and the jock farm when they burned it all down.
Yeah. And and I often wonder if that's where they got the idea for that.
That's what I was thinking when you said that.
This was like a really tiny house. We called it a kind of a clapboard siding house, and it was like a party location.
Wow.
And had 2 people die in there.
What a way to go.
Yeah, I know. My thought was that, sometimes obviously it goes without saying, people don't make the best decisions. But if you walk into a bar and they're selling you bottles of alcohol, and listen, if I'm not mistaken, this couple had recently gotten engaged.
Yeah, they had been together for some time, but they were celebrating their engagement. 1 week engaged.
Yeah,
They were celebrating, and they bought it from the restaurant. That's the thing. See, Joe, I told you when we started, I thought they made it the way they made it sound homemade limoncello.
Yeah.
When you hear that in a story, don't you think homemade means that Dave Mack and Joseph Scott Morgan got together and made up a batch of limoncello at the house and invited some people over for a cookout? I mean, that's what I was thinking. I had no idea that you could, they were really not, they weren't talking about homemade alcohol. They were talking about a homemade drink, a drink that was made at a restaurant and bottled to take home.
Well, one of the things I was curious about relative to this, if we go to, in Alabama, we have ABC stores,
Right.
which are run by the state of Alabama. And you don't have to buy alcohol there. There are independent alcohol. But, the one thing that we have, on our bottles, we have seals on the bottles, it's like a tax stamp or whatever, that it's something that you look at, and it's recognized where it's sealed. And I'm thinking, so is this behind the bar at this location?
Oh, wow.
And how do you know it hasn't been broken open before? And even if it has been broken open, I mean, there are people that have made thousands and thousands of dollars by forging tax stamps, for cigarettes and alcohol, by the way. And you can seal bottles up and try to make it look like something that it's not. But there is no, what's the term that's used? There is no process by which to guarantee or certify that this is safe to consume, like a consumable that you're going to be putting into your body. The really sad thing about it is that once this has gone down the hatch, Dave, you're done essentially. And particularly if you keep piling it on, because, let's just say that you're having a celebratory moment.
Right.
And
the couple was, Joe, they were actually having drinks together.
You got it over ice. You're sitting there, you're toasting to
Probably
your
tastes
future.
good.
And, the next thing you know, you're in a downward spiral.
What would happen?
Little.
How would you feel? What would you, when you drink alcohol, you're from New Orleans. I got a feeling when you're born, they actually check your, blood alcohol content at birth. They put it on a chart and say, okay, that's your flat line. No, that's your baseline. Then when you do get pulled over for DUI at 25 years old, they go, well, wait a minute. Here's his baseline at birth. No, he was a 0.13 at birth. What is he now? 0.15? No, he's fine.
Yeah, in South Louisiana, we still have drive-through daiquiri stands where you're not breaking the law.
What?
You can come on. You can get high-octane frozen daiquiris, and they'll put a lid on it, but they don't. Here's how they get around it. They don't give you a straw. And so, but
because nobody has plastic straws in their car. Nobody's got a straw in their car. Oh my gosh, you're messing with me, aren't you?
No, please, I beg you, if you don't believe, I tell my college students,
that's just another reason for me to not move to New Orleans. I mean,
assume that I'm lying.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's that way, and you can buy it by the gallon as well. And yeah, absolutely.
Oh my God.
Listen, I'm not here to make excuses. New Orleans is a very unique place. But you have an expectation of safety in the sense of what you're going to be putting into your body.
Right.
And look, I have had people, Dave, and every colleague that I know of in medical legal death investigation has had alcohol related deaths. And let's push anything involving a motorized vehicle to the side. Okay. And let's push anything to the side that is fueled by alcohol, like anger, which, you and I both have seen a lot of over the years. I know you have as a recovery counselor.
Yeah.
It'll drive people. I'm just talking about
drinking too much to the point where you die.
Yeah. Where you die. And we hear this, don't we hear this every single year in fall when you have people that are recruited in fraternities.
Yep.
And you'll get these kids that come in, they're fresh-faced off the farm. They've never been away from home. And there's any number of these stories out there where these kids are forced to consume massive amounts of alcohol. And you will have this manifestation of an alcohol, what's referred to as acute alcohol toxicity, is actually what it's referred to as. And that we're talking about ethanol here. And so with ethanol and some of the symptomology that you'll get with with consumption of too much ethanol is you'll get stomach cramps, pain. And we've seen people, you get people that are vomiting, projectile vomiting. The body's not meant to handle that. Obviously, they lose balance. There's confusion, and you'll find people just talking out of their minds. And this is both people that are acutely affected by alcohol as well as those that are chronically affected by alcohol. They might not even know, where they are. You'll have people that have slurred speech. That's one of the things that police officers obviously look for, along with unable to walk a straight line or maintain a lane where they're breaking center lane. And then you'll have people that will pass out. Many times with those that go into an unconscious state with ethanol will eventually wake up. Okay. But it's very dangerous. A lot of it's dependent upon the individual's own personal metabolism and also their body size. How much can you consume without it becoming so toxic that it's going to push you over the edge? And here's one of the most insidious things that I've seen with ethanol poisoning is you will have people that will begin to vomit blood. And there's actually a condition that I don't know that we would ever cover on another edition of Body Bags. But I'll go ahead and throw it out here. And this is something that our friends may not have heard of before. But there's a condition called esophageal varices, which, let's see, how can I describe this? Generally with chronic alcoholism or ethanolism, you will have people that have so eroded their esophageal lining and their stomach that it becomes very, very fragile. And they might have stomach upset, and they might be functioning. You're talking about chronic alcoholism. They might be functioning, but there's that one drink that after all these years that they take, and their esophagus is so eroded that finally one of those vessels inside of that delicate sleeve ruptures. Well, guess what happens? When it ruptures, that blood travels down the esophagus, winds up in the stomach. Now, I don't know how many people have ever, like you've had a busted lip and you've tasted your own blood. It's disgusting. It's not something that's pleasant. Just imagine suddenly you get a multiple cc dump of alcohol or blood into your stomach. And Dave, I've walked onto scenes, and I can remember 3 right off the top of my head that when I got there to the scene, and this is pretty amazing. In all 3 of the cases, I had 3 separate young officers tell me that they thought they had a beating death, because there was projected blood everywhere. And it makes the individual so nauseated that they do begin to projectile vomit. And you'll get this kind of, it'll almost look like coffee grounds, bloody coffee grounds, and it's everywhere. You'll see it if they were seated at a table, it'll be all over the table. In the laboratory or the bathroom, you'll see the sink. It'll look like they've been stabbed or something like that, and you'll see blood all over the, or they'll wind up in the bed, and the bed is super saturated. Well, it's not trauma in the classic sense that they have sustained. This is a projected bleeding that occurs, and it is directly related to habitual abuse of alcohol. Most people don't think about that, but you see it in the medical legal world. You see it. So you can't, just because you've got a tremendous amount of blood at a scene, you cannot necessarily say, oh yeah, well, this is some kind of trauma that has occurred. You have to weigh everything. But in these cases that we're discussing today, ethanol would have been far more welcome than what these individuals were actually exposed to. You know, Dave, I'd mentioned this to you in passing before we signed on. Interestingly enough, this does not involve New Orleans. I had mentioned to you, though, that in Atlanta, I had worked, we had a string of cases involving alcohol poisoning, forgive me, that had arisen from bathtub gin. And that's a term that actually comes from the 20s, when Prohibition was still a thing, arguably one of the worst decisions the U.S. government has ever made. And bathtub gin was created literally in people's bathtub because they could create a high volume of alcohol, bottle it, and then sell it, bootlegging it, essentially. We're not talking about a regular still here, okay? We're talking about making it inside of a house in a particular way. And we had a series of these cases, and it was, we go on and you're more guilty of this than I am because I've been doing this for a long time. You'll say, I hate to say that this is kind of interesting because it's so gruesome, but this is one of those moments in life that, as a death investigator, it's like, I hate that the people died, but it was kind of interesting, intellectually stimulating that, that I would be part of an investigation, and they weren't all my cases, but that we had people that had actually died of tainted alcohol. And that's
70 years after Prohibition.
Yeah, exactly. Back then the coroners back in the 20s, when that's all they had, they worked those cases. And you'd have people that one of the biggest things back then was lead poisoning that would arise from this, and it would create all kinds of problems.
That was from the stills, right? Using lead line pipes and things.
Yeah, and how they're producing this. And then not to mention anything that they would, quote unquote, accentuate their own branding with chemically.
Wow.
And you never know, what could be added. But Dave, back to this case involving
Let me, I need to ask you more about this bathtub gin.
Yeah, sure.
You're talking about Metro Atlanta.
Oh, yeah.
And you're talking about in the 90s?
In the 90s, yeah.
That people were actually buying, you can buy gin.
Yeah, they would go to homes. And if I remember correctly, and I know that you're going to know where I'm talking, well, it's right by the old Olympic Stadium,
right,
which became Turner Field.
Yep.
You've been to Braves games there, as I have.
Yeah.
And it was back in that area over there. There were a couple of locations where they were making the stuff.
As cheap as you can buy legitimate alcohol.
Right. Yeah.
And they would still go that way.
Well, you cut out the middleman. You cut out you're going directly to the purchaser. And here's the sad thing about it. There are so many people out there that are crippled by alcohol addiction.
Yes.
That they'll go everywhere. And I've worked cases or had colleagues that have worked cases where, and here's a different kind of alcohol, where there have been prisoners that were not being treated for alcohol related dependency, and they were drinking isopropyl alcohol, rubbing alcohol,
right,
in the jails if they could get their hands on it, because the body is so dependent upon it. It's very, very sad. It's very lethal. If
you remember, Michael Dukakis, 1988 Democratic nominee for president. Yeah. Remember that? Michael Dukakis' wife, Kitty Dukakis. Yeah. She was an alcoholic who ended up with nail polish remover and things like that landed. Thankfully, she, I believe, found recovery after that. But
oh my gosh,
there have been so many. The other part is on Native American reservations in New Mexico. I remember in Gallup, New Mexico, having a problem with Aquanet because it had such a huge, the hairspray had such a huge concentration of alcohol. They would pop a nail because they didn't sell alcohol there on Sundays. Right. And they would take a nail, put it in the bottom of that, and suck the alcohol out of the Aquanet, which would then eat it at their throat and everything else.
And it's insidious is what it comes down to. And it's a dangerous, it is to say that it's dangerous is certainly an understatement because it's so insidious, I think.
But in this case, people are buying something they trust and believe it's just a harmless drink. I'm buying a couple of bottles of limoncello, a drink my fiance and I enjoy, and we're going to take it back to our love nest and we're going to drink it in our newfound home country of Vietnam. and they buy several bottles from the local restaurant. They're bottled there. They bought them there. Yet they weren't made with ethanol, as you've been talking about. What were they made with, Joe? Why are people dying from this?
Well, it's made with actually methanol, not ethanol. And let me just break this down. There's 3 different types.
I am such an idiot. I would just see ethanol, and I would think, okay, medium methanol. There you go.
They're purpose for specific things. Listen, everybody, if you're a teetotaler and you've never had alcohol consumable like ethanol,
right,
then you've been around isopropyl alcohol.
Right.
Most people have it in their house. It's rubbing alcohol, okay, and it's used for cleansing, okay,
right.
and that's one of the reasons. You go to get a shot at the doctor's office, for instance. You're going to swab that area with isopropyl alcohol more than likely. It's also used as a hand cleanser,
right?
And Lord knows we've come through everything with COVID. It doesn't necessarily have a naturally occurring smell to it. Okay.
Right.
It's heightened though, I think, like a lot of things through the chemical process where, you can get a whiff of it and you'll recognize it immediately. But there's 3 types of alcohol. We have ethanol, we have methanol, and isopropyl alcohol commonly that we see. And every one of these has linkage to things that are absolutely dire if they are in fact consumed, because they're so very, very dangerous. Most people can't appreciate it, but these young people, this young couple that had been consuming this limoncello, were exposing themselves to, I think personally, one of the most dangerous types of alcohol that there is, that would begin to shut them down, because it will literally lead to a multi-system or multi-organ failure. And once that train starts, okay, it's really hard to get it stopped. Interestingly enough, one of the things, there are a couple of different types of agents out there, Dave, that you can apply if you get to the person soon enough, and it stems it, okay, so that they can go back into recovery. But there's always a problem that you've got permanent organ damage along with consumption of methanol. But, in the absence, medical practitioners will actually treat methanol poisoning with ethanol, and it counteracts.
Oh, wow.
It kind of counteracts.
So drink actual real alcohol, consumable alcohol.
Right, consumable alcohol. Now,
why would they use methanol, Joe? What would be the purpose of using methanol? Is it deadly first drink, or does it require some? Do I have to drink a bunch, or? I mean, I'm thinking, why would you use this?
You're going to have effects of it even after the consumption of just a wee bit of it. Now, I'm not saying that the consumption of just like a single shot of it is necessarily going to push you over the edge. But how many people do you know that go out and purchase like a nice bottle of alcohol that they like, assuming that it is quote unquote safe,
right,
are going to stop with merely one drink? And it tastes like lemons, Dave. I mean, lemon's not necessarily my favorite thing in the world, but I like a good lemon pie just as much as the next person. It's got lemon zest in it. You put it over ice. Can you imagine? You're in Southeast Asia. It's hot and humid. Can you imagine how refreshing that is? You're gonna, and it's celebratory.
Yeah.
It's got kind of this uplifting. But by the time you've begun to consume this to the point of where you would normally consume an alcohol-based beverage that is ethanol, by that point in time, after you've had several drinks of it, you're going down a road that becomes very, very dark real quick. You're going to have shortness of breath, lightheadedness. They develop something that's referred to actually as snow blindness. And this is an interesting little caveat along with this, because many people back in the 1920s with bathtub gin, they would go blind as a result of drinking bathtub gin. That was one of the things that was indicative of consumption of the stuff. But with methanol, you develop what's called snow blindness. And if I am not mistaken, one of the victims, and correct me if I'm wrong, she actually contacted her mother in this particular case and said that she had just this incredibly banging headache, and it was the worst, I think, quote unquote, it was the worst hangover she had ever suffered. She had survived long enough to fire off a message to her mom. And here was the interesting thing, Dave. She reported seeing little black spots in front of her eyes. And it's like, have you ever had that where you wake up in the morning, maybe you've slept really good the night before, and it's kind of hard to shake the cobwebs out and you can't get your eyes clear? Can you imagine, no matter how much you rub your eyes or maybe you splash your eyes with water, there are these black dots that are appearing before your eyes. And it's causing nerve damage, actually, to the optic nerve. It's gotten into the brain at this point in time. Its uptake is into the brain. And so that's one of the areas that it impacts. And so they develop snow blindness. And if I'm not mistaken, this young woman actually reported to her mother that she was having difficulty seeing.
Yep, she did. It was Greta Otteson. She actually did tell her mother that she was having the worst hangover and told her some of the symptoms. Couldn't see. She was having trouble seeing. And I am just blown away by this, Joe, because this is not a one-off, is it? I mean, you're describing symptoms of something that, if I'm in a country, I'm drinking something out of a bottle that I purchased at a legitimate place.
Right. Yeah.
It would never occur to me that, okay, you have a hangover from drinking too much alcohol. I get it. But there is a point where, you kind of counteract the alcoholic in me. They counteract it by drinking. Okay. If you have a really bad hangover, you start drinking again and you feel better, and it just kind of prolongs it. But you're talking about something here with methanol, where the people that are doing this, are they using it to save money? Is ethanol so expensive that methanol is a cheaper option, that they're just thinking, hey, if I sell this and they don't drink it all at one time, they'll live and they'll just have a bad hangover? Nobody's going to put two and two together, because if, based on what you're saying, this sounds like murder. It doesn't sound like we mixed up some brew and it affected somebody wrong. You have to know the consequences of drinking all of this, putting methanol instead of alcohol, instead of ethanol, that people are going to die.
Yeah, but if you're the consumer of it, you have, and you're not a bad pun here, you're blindsided by it.
Right. Literally.
And can you imagine the level of confusion that comes along with this? Because you're thinking, okay, what's affecting me? And then she's got her fiance there who is equally disturbed. He's in a separate area from where she is.
Until now, I did not understand that, Joe. I read the report.
It's a horrific thing. Let me tell you one more thing that's interesting about methanol, and folks might not realize this. Did you know that if you drink diet sodas, and this has been floating around but this is legit. If you drink diet soda it's kind of got that weird sweetener that's in it, aspartame. Well, aspartame actually produces methanol. And another component of methanol is, you ready for this? Is formaldehyde. So this thing will kick off. And there were people years and years ago that would say, and this is not true, but they will say, well, diet sodas have got formaldehyde in it. No, it's got aspartame, which is used to produce methanol, and methanol is a component of, or can be used to produce, formaldehyde. So it's very chemically complex, like so many other things that we talk about relative to the ingestion. And if you're just going about your life you're a young couple and you're excited about the future and you're thinking, oh my God, I can't wait to get married. We're going to start a life. We're going to celebrate. We're going to live out our dreams here in Southeast Asia. Lord have mercy. It comes to a very sudden crashing halt. And I mean right quick, Dave. For this young couple that we've been discussing, Dave, this isn't the only location that we're faced with. I hate it when the news media, which I guess to kind of a degree I'm a part of the machine, I hate it when they throw around the term epidemic, because epidemic implies something that is widespread. But I don't think that this is an epidemic. I think that it is a through line that is running with many of these cases. Dave, just since January, this is occurring in a variety, and I'm talking about geographically diverse areas around the globe. And one of the things that this made me think of, do you remember, was it the Dominican Republic? It was like 3 years ago. We had all those deaths at the resorts. Do you remember that?
I do.
Actually went on CNN and covered this.
We did it on Nancy Grace.
They didn't know what it was. We were thinking that it was some kind of phosphate-related fertilizer that was being used. It's not regulated there.
Right.
And I don't know that they ever came up with a solid answer, but people were terrified. I think that was in the Dominican Republic and maybe a couple other, where people were just dropping dead.
Right.
You go on vacation and you die or become deathly ill. But in addition, the couple was in Vietnam, but we've got 6 people, including one American, that was hit as well in Laos, which is obviously, if you know anything about the history of Southeast Asia and the Vietnam War, Laos is immediately adjacent. And these people wound up really, really sick. And again, Dave, this is methanol poisoning.
And in that case, one was a teenager that died, was on life support in a Bangkok hospital. So you've got people spread out to get attention, to get medical attention for what is happening. But it all goes back to methanol poisoning that they got from buying something they thought was regular alcohol. And the reason we're getting these, I dare say, there are enough indigenous people in all these countries who are also suffering the same fate. We just don't hear about them because, we're the national press takes care of foreigners. They cover, and when that's why there will be 6 people died, including one American. 33 people died, 2 American, and I'm not dodging anything by saying that. Just pointing out that those are the types of stories we're seeing, and they all come back to methanol. And that's why I was asking you a few minutes ago, what would be the point? Using methanol.
This is what I think, and I think it has to do with taxing of ethanol, taxing of alcohol. Okay, because look, you have a built-in people. Okay, let's just face it this way: if Kim and I flew, she's dying for me to take her to Puerto Rico or U.S. Virgin Islands, which I've never been to either one. We have an idea of sitting on white sand beach and enjoy. We're probably going to have an adult drink if and when we ever go, okay? That's one of the things that you do when you go on vacation. You've got a built-in need that's there. Well, I think these governments are taxing ethanol. And so the people that are trying to make money in the middle are saying it's a bridge too far for us. We've got to come up with another solution. I.e., we've got this event that occurs in Vietnam where you've got these bottles that are on the back shelf. Let me hook you up with this. My one of my questions though is that, okay, if you're a barman and you're working in at a resort or in a saloon, do you not have enough sense to understand what methanol is going to do to a fellow human being if you give it to them? And you're not going to get a return customer with this. This is, you might as well be giving them strychnine. And so that's what absolutely blows my mind about this. So I think that there's economic pressures that are being applied along the way here, because Dave, got to tell you, brother, it ain't just Laos and it ain't just Vietnam.
No.
We've got a story that dropped in January.
Yeah.
Just last month out of Turkey. What was the number of people?
Well, there's two. Okay, in one story, we had 17 people killed, 22 hospitalized in Istanbul after drinking bootleg alcohol. And a number of those are still in the hospital. 7 have been discharged, but 17 people dead, 22 people hospitalized.
Whoa. How many people did you say died?
17 people died, 22
Holy
hospitalized.
Smokes.
But then, here we go. Here's another one. This just hit us. Poison horror, suspected methanol poisoning kills 33 in Turkey with 48 in hospitals as 4 who sold tainted drinks arrested for homicide. This is the question I asked at the beginning with you off air. Why are we not charging these people with murder? If you're mixing methanol, calling it alcohol, drinking out, I'm telling you, you may as well load a gun and start pointing it into a crowd.
Because you cannot say, I don't think that you can say, any reasonable person cannot say that they don't understand what is the potential here, the lethality. And you make a good point by talking about pointing the muzzle of a loaded weapon at somebody, and then all of a sudden you think that you pull the trigger and nothing's going to happen.
Right.
Well, you're an idiot.
Yes.
And not only you're an idiot, it's not even idiocy. It's malicious. It's malevolent.
Mm-hmm.
It's malevolent because now you're doing this at the risk of killing people to make a buck. And that's what this is. I don't know that you've got individuals that they don't have like a serialized mentality here where they're going out to try to poison this many people. I think that it's monetarily driven. Mm-hmm. They want to make as much money as they possibly can. I got to tell you, I don't think that in Vietnam, Laos, or in certainly Turkey,
mm-hmm.
I would want to be on the end of an accusation in that governmental system,
right,
of having caused the deaths or injuries of multiple
mm-hmm.
people. I think they're going to pay a real price. We have to be very mindful of what we consume when we go on any trip that's out there, because particularly for folks that are looking to celebrate, whatever you do it with caution. Whether you're visiting my hometown of New Orleans for Carnival or any other time, or whether you're just hanging out with friends that show up with a bottle of Shine and say, hey, look what I got, try this, or whether you're going to a resort in a foreign country, because nobody is going to watch care over you like you. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.